Good afternoon, everybody. Pigskin Pete here. Happy Tuesday to everybody, and also happy early Independence Day to everybody. It's great not to be English, isn't it? If we were, we wouldn't have football. Well, we still have football, but it wouldn't be the kind of football we're talking about today. Anyway, so what I'm going to do today is continue my college football fantasy draft videos. I have already covered 3 conferences now. I've covered the ACC, the SEC, and the Big Ten. Today, I'm doing the Big 12. This should be fun. Let's get right into it. Oh, I almost forgot. Just in case you're just stumbling on this video now and haven't seen the other ones, what I'm doing is the same thing as a daily fantasy draft. 9 players. I'm choosing 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a defensive end, a linebacker, and either a cornerback or a safety. Let's start with quarterback. This is going to be, well, these are all going to be controversial for as far as Big 12 fans are concerned. I'm picking Will Grier out of West Virginia. So this was easy to me. I realized that there are a lot of talented quarterbacks in the Big 12. I mean, it's a passing league for the most part. The reason I'm picking him is because he was 3rd place last year and just about every stat, quarterback passing stat in the Big 12. Behind who? Behind Baker Mayfield and Mason Rudolph. Well, in case you've been living under a rock, Baker Mayfield and Mason Rudolph are no longer in college anymore. They're in the NFL now. This is going to be the most veteran quarterback in the league. West Virginia has a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball. Will Grier's first year with West Virginia was last year because the whole thing with Florida and they had to stay out a year. The dude's like 50 years old by now. I mean, let's be honest here. He's been playing football a long time. He's one of the older quarterbacks in college. And he's very good. So no brainer for me. I'm picking Will Grier. He's got last year 65% completion percentage and like 34 touchdowns. I think he'll even get better than that this year. West Virginia could be a dark horse to win that conference. I mean, I still think that Oklahoma and possibly even Texas and, of course, TCU and maybe even throw Oklahoma State in there are probably more favorites to win that conference than West Virginia is. But don't be surprised if they make a run at it. I wouldn't be. Next, 2 running backs. This was harder than I thought. You think of the Big 12 as a passing league, which it, for the most part, it is. A lot of the publications I was reading was saying that this is the year of the running back in the Big 12. They got a lot of studs on a lot of different teams running the ball this year. So this was not easy, and I'm sure I'm going to piss somebody off because I'm going to leave one out in particular that everyone's going to say that I'm stupid for leaving out. First one I'm taking, Justice Hill, Oklahoma State. 112 yards per game last year in a passing league. I think he's ranked to be the leading rusher in the Big 12 again this year, or this year. So I'm taking Justice Hill. I don't care what you say. Now, everyone's expecting me with this second pick to take Rodney Anderson out of Oklahoma. I'm not going to do that. This is where I'm going to piss some people off. And I'll explain to you in a second why I'm taking this other guy over Anderson. I'm taking David Montgomery out of Iowa State. Now, you would say, how could you possibly do that over Rodney Anderson? Well, the reason I'm doing that over Rodney Anderson is Iowa State is more of a running team than Oklahoma is. Now, I realize that Baker Mayfield's gone, and they're going to probably rely more on Rodney Anderson. Well, the new Oklahoma quarterback is also a running quarterback. I mean, he'll pass the ball too. Any quarterback at Oklahoma is going to be it's a pass-heavy offense. So you can always count on that no matter who the quarterback is. But when you throw the ability for their new quarterback to run as well as pass, that's going to probably take some of the touches away from Rodney Anderson. And let's be real, Iowa State is going to rely on the run a lot more than Oklahoma is. Not to mention that last year Montgomery had 1,100 yards on the ground, 11 touchdowns, and he's a dual threat running back. He catches a lot of balls out of the backfield as well. So from a fantasy standpoint, he's going to rack up a lot of yards because Iowa State does not have the overall talent on their offense that Oklahoma does. So a guy like him can really light the numbers up. All right, let's do wide receivers. First one, David Sills, West Virginia. This is simple. He's the fastest guy on the field, maybe one of the fastest guys in the country, and he's Will Grier's go-to guy, and West Virginia is going to throw the ball a lot. I expect big numbers out of this guy this year. If Will Grier is half as good as I think he's going to be this year, and this is his #1 target, I'd be stupid not to pick him. Next on the list, Marquis Brown, Oklahoma. Look, it's simple. This might be the best wide receiver in the Big 12. I realize there's a lot of really good wide receivers in the Big 12. Like I said 1,000 times before, it's a passing league. And so wide receivers get a lot of love in the Big 12 as well as quarterbacks. But as far as a talent standpoint, it's hard to say with the freshmen coming in or guys that were redshirted last year where they'll fall in this pantheon. But I'm going off of last year. And what else I'm going off of is the fact that I said before is that Oklahoma throws the ball a lot. And so when you have the talent of this guy and the offensive system that Oklahoma runs, boom, you got a match made in heaven. The third wide receiver I'm taking, Denzel Mims, wide receiver out of Baylor. Last year, 61 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns on a very pass-happy offense. Now, going through these wide receivers in the Big 12, listen, there's a dozen guys on other teams that I could have put in these 3 spots and been just fine. So save your crying for me if I didn't pick one from your team. I don't want to hear it. Next on the list, defensive end, Ben Banogu, TCU. Now, I'm sure I just butchered the hell out of that name, but I'm sorry. When you have a last name like Banogu, come on. Somebody's going to mess it up. Now, last year, TCU had the stat-wise the #1 defense in the Big 12. Now, I think that Texas was right there with them stat-wise. And just watching the games, it looked to me like Texas had the most complete defense in the Big 12. But you can't lie. Stats don't lie, I guess, as they say. And, TCU had the best stats. I think they had a top 10 defense in the country, which is unheard of in the Big 12. We all know that their biggest problem is the fact that they don't play a lot of defense over there. So it goes without saying that I would pick a sack machine, tackle machine, nightmare of a defensive end from TCU to put in this spot. Last year, he had 16.5 tackles for loss, 8.5 sacks. Pretty good. Next position, linebacker. I'm going with David Long from West Virginia. Last year, 75 tackles, 13.5 tackles for loss. And we all know how I feel about linebackers. I don't care about interceptions or sacks when it comes to linebackers. I want tackles. That's what I want. Don't miss the tackles. Last position, cornerback or safety. Well, I'm going with the cornerback. I'm going with Chris Boyd out of Texas. Now, this is a tricky position in the Big 12 because they pass so much and there's so much speed on the offenses at the wide receiver positions. So I don't envy being a cornerback in the Big 12 at all. But this guy could have won in the draft last year, decided to come back as a senior, and he will probably be the best cornerback in the Big 12 this year. He led the Big 12 last year with 15 pass breakups, and there's no reason for me to think that he won't do that again. So there you go, Chris Boyd, Texas. Now that I've finished, I just want to reiterate that if you're mad at me for not picking one of the players that you think I should pick in a fantasy draft, well, if you think I care, you're living in a fantasy world. Anyway, have a great 4th of July. I'll see you guys later this week. Pigskin Pete, checking out.